Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Weather on the Go here. Happy Friday, May 19th. This is my first ever podcast, so thank you guys so much for joining. If you already are liking this, definitely press the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel as well. We're going to be going over a bunch of long range forecasts on these podcasts into the future. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about our summer forecast for 2023. We'll be breaking down the temperature and precipitation trends month by month, June through August. And then we'll also be going over the summer severe weather forecast as well throughout this podcast. So thank you guys so much for joining. This morning, we are going to be talking about the overview real quick because it is very interesting that as we're going through the spring here, that we're getting back into El Nino conditions, and this is the first time that we've been in El Nino, dating all the way back to about 2015. So this is very rare air that we've had over the past few years. I know we've been in a 3-year La Nina. We're finally getting out of a La Nina and ENSO neutral conditions, and we are transitioning more to El Nino here, and especially as we go into the fall and winter months, that's really when you see more of the effects of the El Nino, but we still will see some later on this summer, especially as we get in towards that July and August timeframe. So kind of looking at my summer forecast overview, again, that's kind of what we're talking about today, just temperature, precipitation trends from June through August, and my severe weather forecast through the summer months from June, July, and August as well. So let's look here first at June. June is going to be an interesting month here. We're just transitioning out of an ENSO neutral with the climate pattern and into an El Nino. This will be a weak El Nino going into June of 2023. And as far as our temperature anomalies are concerned, usually in June we start to warm up all across North America, but this June I'm really expecting a lot of the heat to be building off across the western United States, really the Rocky Mountains on westward. I think we're going to have a lot of ridging building across the western United States, places like the Pacific Northwest, the northern Rockies, and then getting down and towards like central California, the Sacramento Valley. Those are the areas I am pinpointing for more of a hotter June than typical across those areas. I do think it'll be more average with our temperatures across portions of New England, the Northeast, getting down through the central Great Lakes states there, places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, and then getting back through portions of the Missouri Valley, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma. Those are the areas where I see more of an average or typical temperature pattern through the month of June. And then as we go into the southeast, I'm really expecting more troughing underneath of that ridge or just to the right of that ridge there across the eastern third of the country. So the eastern seaboard down, especially into like the Carolinas, Georgia, North Florida, and then back west to Texas Hill Country there to central Texas. That's really where I see the cooler than normal temperatures going through the month of June. So that is kind of my temperature perspective for June. Looking ahead to our precipitation in June, we do see a little bit of some changes of what we've seen from this spring. So as we move into June, as the El Nino is starting to move in, we have a little bit more of an anomaly for below normal precipitation taking hold, I think, across the upper Great Lakes. So from like the Arrowhead of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and through like southeastern Canada, those will be the areas I will be keeping an eye on for more below normal precipitation. Really, when you average all 30 days of the month of June out, that's what I see. I see more average precipitation out west across Washington State, Idaho, Oregon, and then down into California there. I do think there will be some decent rain across those areas, but I think more average precipitation through the month of June. Where I do see where more trouble will be lying ahead could be across portions of the central Rockies there into Wyoming, Colorado, and then down across the Great Plains and in towards the Tennessee Valley. That's where I see most of the above average precipitation through the month of June there. And I think we could even have a couple of significant flash flooding events if we have a lot of these thunderstorms moving over the same areas, especially if the jet stream does kind of hang around there across the central plains there going in towards the middle of the month. So that will be interesting going through June. Otherwise, yeah, I see a pretty typical June, temperature wise, precipitation wise. It's always hot in summer. summer solstice isn't until June 21st, so we have a few weeks yet, but definitely seeing a little bit more of a hotter June across the west, more of an average in between, and then a below average June as far as temperatures go across the eastern United States, and then a below normal precipitation up across the upper Great Lakes, southeastern Canada, and into the New England region. More average conditions across the west and across the Midwest and Ohio Valley, and then above normal precipitation expected across the central Rockies, the central and southern plains, and the Tennessee Valley through the month of June. But let's talk about July because some changes are occurring as we go further into the summer. So as we go into July, I see the upper level ridge is really going to take off a little bit more across the middle of the country. I am expecting a lot more above average temperatures, especially across like the Midwestern region and down into the Ohio Valley. There will be above normal temperatures across the south, but probably not as much so as farther to the north. So I think it'll take more of an El Nino characteristic with more warmer than normal temperatures across the north and still slightly above normal to the south, but not as hot as the Midwest or Ohio Valley. I see more average conditions for temperatures as far as July goes across the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast. So Washington State, portions of Oregon, and North Central California. Those are the areas where I am expecting more of an average temperature forecast for July. But going ahead to the precipitation, this is pretty interesting going through July. I think there'll be two areas we're watching for more of heightened precipitation anomalies. One of them being up across the northern plains in the upper Midwest, and that could nose its way eastward towards Michigan there in the central Great Lakes region through the month of July. It may take a little bit for this to get going, and if we have more of an active jet stream over top of that building ridge in the middle of the country, and as you guys know that during the middle of summer we have a lot of building ridges across the middle of the country with the heat waves out there. Over top of those heat waves, we have to watch some of the convection and thunderstorm activity over the top of that because that could produce more severe weather. We'll get into that later. But I do think there will be above normal precipitation up there across, say, the Dakotas, eastern Montana, getting into Minnesota there, northern Iowa, Wisconsin, parts of Illinois, and then getting into Michigan as well. So that is one of the areas. The other area is down across the southern plains. I think we'll still continue to see more above normal precipitation. That could linger across the eastern 2/3 of the country as well, minus the northeast. I think we'll have more average conditions for precipitation across New England and the northeast there. That does include the I-95 corridor from New York City and up there into Boston. I think there will be more of a below normal precipitation starting to work in across the Four Corners region. That could move up further north into southern portions of Wyoming. The monsoon season will be getting off to a strong start, but I think as we go into the middle and end of July, we will start to back off on some of the moisture out there across the desert Southwest. Not that there will be totally absent from the moisture, but I do think there will be some times of where we have significant lulls in the moisture supply there across the desert Southwest, and then more average precipitation if you live out across the Pacific Northwest into Idaho, into Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, and also California. More average July precipitation is expected there as well. And then as we go into August, this gets a little bit more interesting as far as the temperature perspective is. I do think the temperatures just take off in August. I think we'll be drying out, and with the drought continuing in some spots there, with severe and extreme drought probably continuing in some parts of the Great Plains going into August, I think all bets are off. I think we go much above normal with our temperatures as we go into August there. And this could be one of the more significant heat waves we have seen in a couple of summers, I think, especially if you live in the Midwest, parts of the western Ohio Valley, and then back across the Central Plains. That's kind of the bullseye of where I have the highest temperature anomalies there going into August. Some of the longer range models like the CFS or the CAN-SIPS, climate models out there are kind of hinting at an above normal August for temperatures. So we'll have to see how that pans itself out. But the majority of North America, and this does include Canada as well, especially southern Canada, I do think will be warm as well, much above average there. But I think from the Midwest, the western Ohio Valley, and then back into the Central Plains, that is where the highest temperature anomalies will be going into this August. So, and these heat waves could be pretty significant from time to time. through the month. We could have one early August and then another one late August as well. And anytime during these heat waves, we could get those high 80-degree dew points with temperatures in the 80s. And then you have, heat index readings well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We could even see up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit for heat indexes across parts of the Midwest and the Central Plains going in towards the August timeframe. So that will be something I'll be keeping an eye on as far as August goes with our temperatures. Turning over to precipitation, up over top of that, I think there's going to be more below normal precipitation, and probably significantly so. I do think we're going to be drying out in a big way there up across the northern and northeastern United States. More of a typical El Nino pattern. Like I said earlier on in this podcast, is that we're going to be transitioning more into the deeper summer into an El Nino pattern. So, the northern and northeastern United States will be transitioning more to a drier pattern as we go into August, but I do see some precipitation from time to time. But if you average the whole entire month out, it's going to be very hard to find a lot of moisture to get out of drought in some of those areas, especially if you were in drought going into August in the first place. But across the South, different story with an El Nino pattern really starting to emerge into late August, especially. I do expect more above normal precipitation across especially southeastern Arizona, central and southern New Mexico, much of Texas there, especially the Rio Grande Valley and southern Texas. And then that could inch its way eastward across the Gulf Coast states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Those areas will probably be seeing more above average precipitation as far as August goes. So we definitely could be seeing some heavy rainfall events and stuff like that. So that will be something to keep an eye on. Probably not as prevalent with the rainfall as we see in June, but definitely some decent rains coming there across the South in August. So turning lastly to our summer severe weather forecast, it does look pretty interesting. So let's take you through June 1st. Looking at June 1st through June 30th time frame, the severe weather forecast, I do expect more heightened severe weather to merge across the upper Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes region into the Ohio Valley. I think those will be the prime areas, I say, from the Dakotas, Minnesota, down through Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and then eastbound towards western Ohio. Those will be the areas I'm watching closely for more frequent severe weather events, especially from the middle and end of June time frame. That will be the area and time that I'll be watching for more significant severe weather. If we have a ridge that does set up shop over the middle of the country, over top of that, you always have to watch for what we call an MCS pattern. That's where you get those big mesoscale convective systems that develop and then revolve around the outer edge of that ridge. We have to watch those for convective wind events, derechos, stuff like that. I do think there'll be more of a heightened threat for that going into the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley region. We still will probably see, at least early on in June, at least through the first 10 days or so, probably some decent severe weather across the western high plains like we've been seeing lately and across the southern plains as well. So don't let your guard down there as far as severe weather goes. I still think there will be damaging winds, large hail, and some tornado events down across those areas through the month of June. So, but the heightened area definitely looks to be across the eastern Dakotas, Minnesota, and then all the way down through the Chicagoland area and Indianapolis. So if you live in those areas, watch out for more frequent and intense severe weather setups as you go into June. Turning to July, this gets more interesting as well. I think with the ridge starting to take off into July, we're going to see a lot of heat building to the south across the south central United States. And over top of that ridge, we're going to see a lot of instability building up through the month of July. So I think we're going to be seeing more intense severe weather events, probably not as frequent, but we will be seeing probably some intense events going in towards July sometime. We have to be watching this period very closely for derecho potential. I know I always talk about that, but especially into the middle of summer, you have all the heat to the south, you have a lot of instability there. And you have northwest flow aloft over top of that ridge in the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. Classic derecho pattern potentially could emerge through July. So that will be something we'll continue to monitor going forward. But other than that, I think the severe weather threat will be kind of more scattered around the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley. Could have some tornadoes in July, so we'll just keep an eye on that. But I think I transition more to, out of tornado outbreak season, more into into the convective wind event season. So more of the squall lines and derechos. That is probably what is to be expected through July. And then finally going into August, I think we take a little bit more of a break from the severe weather. We still will have it across the eastern 2/3 of the country, more than in some areas than others. I think there could be a little bit more of a heightened threat for severe weather up across the northern plains and upper Midwest continuing into August, especially early on in the month before we start to dry out a little bit toward the middle and late portion of August. I also think there will be another corridor of more medium or enhanced potential for severe weather farther to the east across the mid-Atlantic states, the eastern Ohio Valley, and then on up towards the I-95 corridor into the northeast. So watch out there from Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, those areas. We'll just have to keep an eye on that into August. Probably more, again, damaging wind events than anything else, but we still have to watch out for some large hail and some tornadoes. Other than that, I think the frequency of the severe weather will start to wane a little bit more into August, especially as the moisture gets a little bit trapped in some areas. And we'll have to always watch out for the tropics. That'll be another big key issue that we'll be looking at through August and through the rest of this summer into fall. So that could also change the landscape in which our severe weather looks later on this summer. So we'll continue to watch that. Any tropical activity in the Gulf of Mexico or the Western Atlantic could trap some of the moisture from returning back across the Great Plains or the Midwest or parts of the northern United States in general going through August. So we'll just have to see how that pans out. But yeah, this is my summer forecast for 2023. I hope you guys liked today's podcast. If you guys did like it, be sure to press the thumbs up button down below, the like button. It definitely helps out more than you know. And also subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you like these podcasts, definitely subscribe to the channel. I also do daily weather forecast videos each and every morning at 9 a.m. Central Daylight Time on this channel. I will have another podcast coming out next week where we will be talking about the hurricane season for 2023 in the tropics in general and what I expect to occur across the Atlantic, the Gulf, and also the Eastern Pacific Ocean. So we'll be diving deeper into that in my next podcast next week. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday, a great weekend ahead. If you have nice weather, get outside and enjoy it. Go for a walk the dog, or just enjoy the nice weather outside. A lot of sunshine across the Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes. A little bit rainy weather across the South, but not overly so. But just if you have nice weather, get outside and enjoy it. Get some fresh air. Always good to do. Well, have a great Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.